Madara. So let's kick things off with the man who basically turned the entire shinobi world into his personal chessboard, Madara Uchiha. This guy was the Uchiha, co-founder of the Hidden Leaf, Hashirama's eternal rival, and the dude who came back from the dead more times than Orochimaru would like to admit. And that's saying something. Now, the story of Madara and Hashirama is one of those tragic bromance tales. Two best friends, two leaders, destined to clash forever. Their final showdown at the Valley of the End was legendary. Massive Susanoo versus giant wooden Buddha statue, explosions everywhere. At the end of it, Madara was left in ruins. But here's the wild part. Instead of accepting defeat like a normal person, he bit off a piece of Hashirama's flesh. Yeah, no joke, straight up cannibal moment. I'm sure Hashirama didn't have being lunch on his to-do list that day. That insane move changed everything. By implanting Hashirama's cells into his own body, Madara's healing factor was improved. He laid the groundwork for his entire long-term plan. Over decades, the cells merged with him, extending his life and eventually awakening the Rinnegan. Imagine waiting decades for an upgrade. It's like downloading a video game patch with dial-up internet. The Hashirama cells gave Madara insane regeneration. He could recover from near-death wounds, summon powerful wood style, and when combined with his Rinnegan, he gained the ability to control the Ten Tails. That's not power creep, that's power explosion. No wonder the guy was able to fight the entire allied shinobi forces practically by himself. But even Madara wasn't immune to limits. Integrating the cells wasn't instant. He had to wait years before he could fully use them. And the chakra imbalance was risky. Push it too far, and even Madara, the king of preparation, could burn himself out. But let's be real. When you can tank meteors like he did, who even cares about side effects?
For a second, 1 like equals 1 chakra orb for Hagoromo. 1 subscribe opens another timeline where Madara finally wins the war. So, what timeline are you choosing? If this video leveled up your ninja knowledge, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell like it's a summoning jutsu. We've got more god-tier breakdowns coming. Sharingan, Jugan, even Shibai Otsutsuki's divine powers. You don't want to miss that. And hey, comment your favorite Rinnegan user below. Let's see whose fanbase is strongest in the comments.
Obito. Now, let's move to the guy who probably gave Kakashi the biggest emotional whiplash in the series, Obito Uchiha. Once a happy-go-lucky teammate, he went from "I'll be Hokage" to "let's put the whole world into an infinite dream real quick." Obito's story with Hashirama's cells starts after the Canopy Bridge mission, where half his body got crushed by a giant boulder. Normally, that's game over. But thanks to Madara's intervention, Obito was patched back together using, you guessed it, Hashirama's cells. Combined with Zetsu's body, the cells replaced the parts of him that were destroyed. In short, Obito became part Uchiha, part Hashirama, and part plant. Talk about a cursed character build. The cells gave Obito rapid regeneration, letting him recover from wounds that would kill anyone else. He could even sprout wooden branches from his body to attack or defend. And when you mix that with Kamui, his Mangekyo Sharingan ability, he basically became untouchable. Obito was like an internet troll with admin powers. You could never hit him, and he always had some annoying trick up his sleeve. But it wasn't all perfect. Obito never had the finesse with wood style that Hashirama did. Most of the time, it was raw, ugly branches sticking out of him, not elegant jutsu. And the cells tied him to Zetsu, making him dependent. If he took heavy damage, the regeneration slowed down, leaving him in brutal pain. That's the trade-off. You get god-tier hacks, but the lag can kill you. Without those cells, Obito wouldn't have survived long enough to become the masked man, manipulate the Akatsuki, or even start the Fourth Great Ninja War. Hashirama's legacy, in a twisted way, flowed right through Obito. And the irony? The same power meant to protect the leaf ended up fueling the plan to enslave it. Naruto. First, we've got our boy Naruto. By the end of Shippuden, after his legendary battle with Sasuke at the Valley of the End, both of them were in pretty rough shape. Naruto actually lost his right arm in that fight. Now, for most people, that would have been the end of their shinobi career. But Naruto wasn't about to live the rest of his life one-armed, especially when Hokage duty was waiting. Here's where Hashirama's cells stepped in again. Tsunade, being both Hashirama's granddaughter and the greatest medical ninja alive, used his cells to craft a new prosthetic arm for Naruto. This arm was designed to merge perfectly with his chakra. Basically, it was the ultimate upgrade, like plugging the strongest wood-style battery into Naruto's body. The new arm gave Naruto insane regeneration and chakra flow, ensuring he could still perform at his absolute peak. Some filler episodes even hinted at him channeling low-level wood release from it, though in canon, the arm mainly acted as a durable, chakra-conducting prosthetic. Think of it as Hashirama lending Naruto a high-tech tool to keep him at 100% Hokage power. Of course, even Naruto's arm had its limits. It wasn't indestructible. If pushed too far, the prosthetic could be damaged and needed adjustments. Plus, Naruto never tapped into wood release the way Yamato or Hashirama could. For him, it was about stability and survival, not unlocking a whole new arsenal. Still, the fact that even the protagonist needed Hashirama's cells shows how vital they'd become in shaping the future of shinobi. Sasuke. Now on the other side of that final battle, we've got Sasuke. After Madara stabbed him through the chest and left him on death's door, things looked grim. If it weren't for Kabuto showing up, Sasuke's story would have ended right there. And what did Kabuto use to save him? Yep, Hashirama's cells. Kabuto injected Sasuke with those cells as part of his medical treatment, essentially rebooting his body with the first Hokage's vitality. The result was miraculous. Sasuke survived a mortal wound and recovered fast enough to get back into the war and unlock his Rinnegan shortly after. In other words, Hashirama's DNA was part of the bridge that carried him from near death to his new god-tier power-up. But unlike Naruto's case, Sasuke didn't keep the cells long-term as an implant. They acted more like an emergency patch, helping him regenerate and stabilize. He never gained wood release or any lasting connection to the cells. If anything, it was more of a one-time lifeline rather than a permanent power-up. The risk, though, was real. Mixing Uchiha chakra with Hashirama's cells has always been dangerous. Look at what happened with Madara and Obito. If Kabuto hadn't been careful, Sasuke could have faced rejection, imbalance, or worse. Luckily, his body adapted just enough to survive, and the cells faded out after doing their job. Yamato. Next up, we've got Yamato, the poor guy who ended up being everyone's babysitter in Team 7. Naruto going berserk? Yamato, handle it. Need a treehouse? Yamato, build it. Honestly, if the Hidden Leaf had an Airbnb business, Yamato would have been their top architect. But behind that calm ANBU mask is a really dark backstory. As a kid, Yamato, originally known as Tenzo, was kidnapped by Orochimaru for one of his infamous experiments. Out of 60 children injected with Hashirama's cells, only Yamato survived. That right there tells you how insanely risky these experiments were. The fact that he lived through it made him the one successful prototype for a new generation of wood-style users. So what could he actually do with those powers? Well, Yamato could use wood release to make shelters, restrain enemies, and even suppress tailed beasts. Most famously, he acted as Naruto's leash whenever the Nine Tails tried to take over. With a few hand signs and a wooden cage, he'd shut Kurama down like Naruto was a kid throwing a tantrum in the supermarket. On top of that, his Hashirama cells gave him slightly enhanced regeneration and chakra, enough to keep up with dangerous missions. But let's be clear, Yamato was nowhere near Hashirama's level. His wood style was like comparing a bonsai tree to an actual forest. He could do the basics, sure, but large-scale techniques weren't his thing. Overusing it drained him quickly, and he even needed talismans to help suppress the Nine Tails. That dependency showed the limit of his powers. Even as a watered-down version of Hashirama, Yamato was proof of how broken Hashirama's DNA really was. Danzo. Now we move on to one of the most controversial figures in the series, Danzo Shimura. If shady backroom politics had a face, it would be his. Leader of Root, eternal rival of Hiruzen, and basically, Konoha's self-appointed shadow dictator. He's the type of guy who'd say, for the good of the village, right after doing the most morally questionable thing possible. So where did the Hashirama cells come in? Danzo wasn't satisfied with one shady upgrade. No, he had Orochimaru implant Hashirama's cells directly into his right arm, and then shoved 10 Sharingan into that same arm like he was collecting Pokemon cards. The result? A Frankenstein limb that gave him both regeneration and the ability to spam one of the most busted Uchiha techniques, Izanagi. With the Hashirama cells stabilizing all those Sharingan, Danzo could chain Izanagi activations, rewriting reality itself multiple times in a single fight. Add in some basic wood release, and suddenly this old man became way more dangerous than he looked. In his battle with Sasuke, the only reason he lasted as long as he did was because those cells kept his body alive, while he burned through eyeballs like they were disposable batteries. But of course, power like that came with a cost. His control over the cells was weak, so his arm looked grotesque and unstable. Every use of Izanagi meant losing a Sharingan permanently, and when he finally ran out, there was nothing left to save him. In the end, Danzo fell victim to the very imbalance that comes with trying to play God with Hashirama's DNA. His downfall was proof that even with the strongest cells in the world, you can't cheat death forever. Orochimaru. Now, you can't talk about shady experiments and not bring up Orochimaru. This guy was basically the science teacher from hell, fascinated with everything forbidden, obsessed with immortality, and willing to use anyone as a lab rat. He's one of the legendary Sannin, sure, but also the shinobi who made body snatching into a full-time career. For Orochimaru, Hashirama's cells were like the holy grail. If Hashirama could heal instantly, live longer, and wield wood style like a natural disaster, then Orochimaru wanted that in his DNA cocktail. After getting his hands on Hashirama's remains, he began implanting those cells into his own body. Not to test wood release, but to push his dream of eternal life. The results? Well, Orochimaru gained regeneration far beyond normal shinobi. He could survive wounds that should have killed him outright, extend his lifespan, and enhance his body enough to keep transferring his soul from vessel to vessel. In theory, Hashirama's cells made his entire Immortal Snake project more stable. He could also manipulate wood release in bizarre ways, though let's be honest, his wood style wasn't elegant. If Hashirama's jutsu was a majestic forest, Orochimaru's looked more like a creepy science fair project. But as always, there was a catch. Orochimaru couldn't handle pure Hashirama power. His body was already overloaded with curses, forbidden techniques, and constant soul transfers. Adding Hashirama cells on top created conflicts. Instead of becoming the perfect godlike shinobi, Orochimaru was stuck patching up the cracks with his body switch technique. If he didn't swap hosts regularly, his body would break down under the strain. In the end, the cells gave him more longevity, but never the mastery he craved. Kabuto. And then we've got Kabuto, Orochimaru's right-hand man, who eventually decided, you know what? I'm gonna become Orochimaru 2.0, but cooler. Kabuto always had the brains and medical genius, but when he started tinkering with Hashirama's cells, things went from creepy to full nightmare fuel. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, Kabuto enhanced himself with DNA from multiple sources, including Hashirama. The cells were mainly there for regeneration and vitality, boosting his already ridiculous healing ability. Combine that with Sage Mode, and suddenly, Kabuto could recover from almost anything while staying in peak combat form. Remember how he patched up Sasuke after Itachi nearly ended him? That was Hashirama's cells at work, speeding up the healing process. But Kabuto's relationship with those cells was different from Orochimaru's. He didn't focus on wood release at all. Instead, he used the regenerative aspect to make himself nearly unkillable, then layered it with his medical ninjutsu and snake modifications. Hashirama's DNA became the glue that held his monstrous Sage Mode body together. Kabuto risked losing his humanity entirely. His body was a mix of so many sources that without perfect control, he could have devolved into a complete abomination. He also relied too much on the borrowed power. Without it, his Sage Mode body would have been far less stable. White Zetsu. Now here's where things get weird. Enter White Zetsu, probably one of the strangest characters in all of Naruto. Imagine a mix between a plant, a shinobi, and comic relief, and you've got this guy. He could split his body, turn into other people, and spy on entire armies without being noticed. If Orochimaru was Naruto's mad scientist, then White Zetsu was Madara's mass-produced clone army. So where did he come from? White Zetsu was literally created from Hashirama's cells. Using the chakra of the God Tree and the DNA of the first Hokage, Madara was able to churn out an entire army of White Zetsu soldiers. Basically, Hashirama's body became the blueprint for an endless army of knockoff wood-style users. You could say Madara ran the first Hashirama cell factory outlet. The abilities of White Zetsu were pretty crazy in theory. They had near-limitless regeneration, could merge with the earth to move around undetected, and could even use wood release techniques. More importantly, they could absorb chakra and mimic other ninjas' appearances, making them perfect infiltrators. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, they acted as both soldiers and spies, overwhelming the allied shinobi forces in numbers. But here's the truth. White Zetsu were terrible in one-on-one combat. Their wood release was weak, their durability wasn't great against strong jutsu, and they lacked real individuality. Unless they caught someone off guard. Their role was less about being deadly fighters and more about being pawns in Madara's grand scheme. Hashirama's legendary cells turned into a disposable army, which is both terrifying and kind of sad when you think about it. Guruguru. If White Zetsu was weird, then Guruguru was flat out bizarre. This variant had a swirly, almost comical design, with a goofy personality to match. Fans often joked that he looked more like a Halloween decoration than a dangerous weapon. But don't let the looks fool you, Guruguru had a serious role to play. Like the rest of his kind, Spiral Zetsu was born from Hashirama's cells, engineered by Madara as part of his arsenal. What made him unique was his ability to act like a living suit of armor. When Obito was still recovering from his injuries after Kanabi Bridge, Spiral Zetsu literally wrapped around his body, giving him mobility and protection. He was like Obito's training wheels, except the training wheels could sprout trees and smash boulders. The powers Spiral Zetsu provided were actually impressive. He granted Obito extra defense, rapid regeneration, and access to wood release for both offense and support. With Spiral Zetsu boosting him, Obito was able to fight enemies that would have been impossible for him otherwise, and even get used to wielding his Kamui ability more effectively. But Guruguru wasn't perfect. His strength depended entirely on who he was attached to. On his own, he wasn't particularly threatening, and once separated, he could be destroyed relatively easily. Think of him like a booster pack, great when paired with the right player, but useless on his own. Mitsuki. Now, the artificial son of Orochimaru. Yeah, that Orochimaru. You'd think he'd be some dark, snake-obsessed maniac, but instead we get Mitsuki. Calm, loyal, and suspiciously smooth for a lab-grown ninja. Mitsuki is a walking contradiction. He was literally made in a lab, but somehow he feels more human than half the cast. He's soft-spoken, curious, and has this chill aura that makes you forget he's technically a scientific experiment. Oh, and he absolutely worships Boruto, like full-on sunshine-following devotion. At this point, he might be the only person who enjoys Boruto's jokes. But don't let that calm vibe fool you. When it comes to raw power, Mitsuki is an absolute monster, especially when he enters Sage Mode. That glowing chakra aura, the speed boost, the sensory powers, it's like Orochimaru sat down and said, "What if I made a ninja that can clap half the Leaf Village on a good day?" During his fight with Shinki, Mitsuki unleashes Sage Mode for a moment. And it's terrifying. The energy shift was instant. Shinki went from smug to uh-oh real quick. Even though Mitsuki wasn't allowed to use it, he still did, and saved the day. Classic rebellious prodigy behavior. Sage Mode is powerful, yes, but it's also something he depends on too much. Without it, Mitsuki's fighting potential drops a tier. Plus, he struggles against genjutsu or extremely fast opponents, which is ironic considering how fast he is. Mitsuki is being hyped as someone who could surpass even Orochimaru. That's huge. Orochimaru used to give the entire ninja world anxiety. If Mitsuki keeps evolving, he might just be the Leaf's secret weapon. Silent, glowing, and always one Sage Mode away from breaking the battlefield. Victor. Victor held the Roman numeral 5 and represented Kara's involvement in corporate and technological fronts. He owned a major medical company and used it to fund research into synthetic god trees.
His combat encounter with Orochimaru in the anime arc displayed how he used environment-based strategy. He manipulated the landscape to control Orochimaru's movements and relied on traps to wear him down. Victor was one of the older members of Kara. A former ninja, he became obsessed with extending his life after a major injury. He aligned with Jigen not out of loyalty, but out of opportunity. He viewed Kara's resources as a path to regaining his youth and completing his research on artificial chakra trees. His work nearly created a functioning god tree before it was destroyed. Victor had access to all 5 chakra natures and could regenerate moderate damage. His attacks were built into the terrain itself, giving him an advantage in specific locations. He used chakra conductors embedded in the ground and walls to trap and channel attacks. This control made his fight with Orochimaru more of a battle of patience than raw power. Victor's arrogance made him believe he could manipulate Kara's leadership. This led to his downfall when he tried to hide information from Jigen and Yamato. His lack of allies within Kara isolated him during crisis moments. Victor was killed by Kashin Koji using the Samadhi Truth Flames. His betrayal was exposed, and Koji eliminated him to maintain order within Kara.